Hello everyone, my name is Rikard. I'm a graphics programmer here at Dynasty Studios, and today I thought I might show you a little bit about how we might set up some of our water effects in Providence. So I've made a little test scene, as you can see there, with a little pond, and we need to make some water for the pond. So to start off, in Unreal we have a shading model called the single layer water shader model, which gives us access to this nifty little node, the single layer water material node. And it has some neat physics-based material features for water. What we're mainly gonna worry about is the scattering coefficients and the absorption coefficients. So these are basically gonna tell us how we want light to interact with our water, how we want light to scatter, and how we want light to absorb, which is gonna determine the color of our water. So just quickly here, setting up some parameters. Basically, when we make materials, we want to make them nice and convenient for artists to play around with the parameters and play around with the settings when they actually go and implement the materials for wherever they want to use them. So here I'm just adding some settings for setting the scattering, and for the absorption I'm calling this parameter murkiness because that's essentially what it's going to be for us, how murky the water is. Yeah, so we can try some quick default values. This is gonna look very blue in the editor, but I promise you it's gonna look fine once we're actually in the scene. So we can set that to 0 for now. But yeah, so this basically makes up the core of our water. But of course, water is not just color. We want some texture to our water. So how about we set up some waves for the water? So waves, you can do a lot of fancy stuff with waves. We don't want to go that fancy for this quick little effect, so we're going to do some normals. And the normals are going to tell us how light will interact with the surface of the water, and that's going to give us the effect of some waves. So yeah, I basically just grabbed a little random texture that I found here in the engine, and if I quickly save here, we'll see how that looks. So now we have some texture on the surface of our water. We can add some extra parameters. Like I said before, artists want to play around with a lot of stuff, so we always add parameters for everything. So we can add a parameter for the wave size, which is basically going to be kind of a multiplier between the flat normal, which is the 0, 0, 1, and the normal that we're feeding in here for the texture. And of course, waves are not static either. They're not flat and stationary on the surface. So what we can do is we can add this little panner node, and we can use the panner to basically move the waves across the surface of our water. Here we add some more settings for artists to play around with, the tiling of the waves, which is basically gonna determine how big this mask that we're feeding in, how big this is gonna look when we sample it. And of course, we want the XY coordinate in the world to be our coordinates for this texture, so it moves along the XY axis in the world. So now we get some action here, which is way too fast, of course. So we're gonna add a quick little multiplier here, and then the setting is a bit more easy to tweak, and it's not such a big difference between the numbers. All right, so we got some waves moving across. We can make it a bit more fancier. If we want some more waves, we can basically copy our setup here, and we can do waves along a different axis, and then we can add them together, and it'll look sort of realistic, depending on who you ask, but might be good enough, so we'll see. We'll just copy everything over here. We will blend them together. For normals, you have to do a bit more careful blending rather than just adding them together, because that might look a bit funky. But yeah, so now we have two different axes of waves, and this is almost looking kind of natural. Cool. So now that we have our waves set up, I just quickly cleaned up this material a bit, changed some settings around. So we get a bit more watery look. Maybe the waves are not as aggressive. But I think we also have time to do a little bit of fancy effect shenanigans. So for this, we might want to do a bit of shoreline foam, or maybe artists want some effects around the shore or whatever they want to do. So I've called it shoreline foam for now. For this, I'm using the scene depth without water node, which will basically give us the depth of every pixel in the scene before the water is there. And then we can use pixel depth to compare it to the depth of the actual water. So that can sort of give us a number that we can use to determine how close to the shore are we. So again, we add more parameters. Artists love parameters to play around with. We can add some more panners. We can do some movement in this effect as well. For now, I'm just gonna do it in there. Feed the warp position in here as well. And again, we'll grab texture, call it shore foam texture. We can grab something that's already in the editor, because artists are gonna probably make their own custom stuff for this later anyway, so we can just add something default that looks somewhat okay. And we can use the panner, feed this into both of these as well, the same thing we did with the waves, because these are also kind of going to be waves, but not the exact same waves. We just multiply our nice little mask here that we basically created with our edge detection, so we can have a mask at the edges of our water. We can add a little limiter here, so we can basically decide how strong does it have to be to show up on the surface of the water. Another parameter that some artists can tweak if they want. And let's strengthen it a little bit as well, add some power to it, and to be extra nice, because we love performance, we can add a little quality switch node, so we turn this effect off if you're playing on low, because if you're on low you just want frame rates. And something is broken. It's probably something further down the line. Let's see. Yes, of course. So we need the XY position, because the Z doesn't really mean anything to us when we're just sampling the surface. And we're still missing something. Something with the parameters probably. Ah, yes. So, of course, default values of 0 will of course give us nothing. So we fix up the default values, and there we go. So of course this is just a little proof of concept, and then now that we have the ability to add something to the shoreline, then the artists can play around with values once they actually implement the materials. But yeah, so this is how you can do a quick little shoreline foam effect, and the more effects, the better. So yeah, thanks for watching. Maybe we'll show more some other time, but this will be it for now, and I'll catch you in another episode of How We Do It. Thank you.